There's kind of a phenomenon where when you figure out you're wrong about something and you figure out what it actually is that's right there, that little piece now you have, it's like exciting and invigorating because you get to reform your belief in a better way, in a more correct way.
Yeah.
Humiliating, especially when it happens in public and you're shown to be having been wrong for so long and so vehement about what you were wrong about. But man, is it empowering if you use it properly.
So this is what you see. And we'll give a shout out to our friends over at the Young Turks, because we were talking about this the other day. And Anna Kasparian has been getting dragged quite a bit because she said bonus hole as a term for women's parts is off-putting. But there is something interesting in this. Have you ever asked yourself why it is that these neo terms only ever apply to women and never to men?
Because I think it's ultimately intersectionality as it is now, especially with the trans movement. It is unironically patriarchal, right? The best women are men. Everything is done to the comfort of males. Regardless of what they call themselves, they're ultimately males. And you do not see the same considerations being given to trans men, i.e. females.
I agree that it's patriarchal, but the reason I think that it is bonus hole, menstruator, birthing person, chest feeding. Have they called men jizzers?
No, but they should.
They don't say that. Why? I believe this is predominantly a movement of women. It is females who are pursuing these things with a female internal perspective. So the words they use are based on being
their
female.
experiences.
Men typically do not care. So men aren't complaining about being called names. They're not proposing being called something else. It is females typically, and we see this in the data when it comes to trans kids. Overwhelmingly, trans children tend to be female. Perhaps it is a social issue of sorts, and that's why all of the neo terms are like menstruator, bonus hole haver. It only pertains to women.
I don't think that the phenomena of trans women and trans men are the same.
No, they're not.
I think that I don't think the same stuff is going on upstairs for a woman to want to live their life as a man or believe that they are a man or whatever.
I mean,
for a man that thinks that they're a woman.
There are vastly different rates in how men versus women identify as being gay, like lesbian, for example, and also rates of identifying as trans. This is not something new. Women and men do not function in the same realm in regard to sexuality. There are really interesting twin studies that they've done on identical twins. So if something like sexuality were completely genetic, for example, you would expect that any genetic twin set would have the same sexuality, i.e. both straight or both gay. What they found is that that's not the case. So there is obviously a component that's determined by environment, and what they have found that it is much more likely for a female set of twins to have different sexualities, meaning that female sexuality is a lot more fluid or easily influenced maybe by environment than male sexuality.
That's kind of profound. Because it's a simple concept that men and women that become trans are experiencing different, to the point where they used to have gay, well, they still do gay and lesbian. It's the same thing. Someone that enjoys sexuality with the same sex.
Homosexual.
But they have different words, completely different words. It's a gay man, I guess you would say gay man or a gay woman, but a lesbian, you don't have lesbian men.
So but you do have gay women.
But you do have gay women.
Yeah,
that's very
true.
interesting.
I think men care less, women care more. Like, well, across the board on everything, I feel like if guys are more likely to be like,
well, women are way more social creatures. I don't know if you saw, there was this viral TikTok video that was going on. It was a trans man, so a biological female, who essentially was crying on TikTok saying life was so much harder living as a man than she had thought it would be, because it's harder to make friends, people aren't as considerate, and essentially like there is no more feminine or womanly thing you can do than be crying about these things. But I think it just illustrated where perhaps this isn't someone who is secretly trapped inside a male body, because these are very feminine urges that not to say that men can't have feelings or they don't, but overall, like the female experience is just way more concerned with social aspects, being involved in a group and all of that.
Like isolation tends to be harder on women.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Way harder. Yeah. Men can function alone significantly better than women can. Not that men constantly, not that every man doesn't need, social interaction.
Hashtag
and stuff.
not all averages, etc.
Yeah. But it's much easier for men to deal with being alone.
I guess,
and you find that like men, when you deal with like like hermits and dudes, that kind of, people that are off on their own stuff. It's very, very, very frequently men. It's very rarely women.
And the women give birth. They're supposed to be nurturing. Well, not supposed to. They tend to be nurturing the baby, and they immediately they got that bond, physical, two people, and the man is off finding the food somewhere or something.
Right. And I think what's really interesting is that when we look at the prevalence of autism diagnoses, I'm not even going to touch on how vaccines may or may not relate to this. I'm not trying to get in trouble, but we see that I think a lot of behaviors that may have just traditionally been more male behaviors, because females overwhelmingly dominate psychology, I think they are essentially trying to pathologize what a lot of time is just regular male behavior.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Like not
Absolutely.
every man is autistic. It's just a man. Like sometimes they're just like that. And I think as women, we want to say that, no, you're wrong for thinking this. It's like, no, they're just different than we are.
I think if we really were in a patriarchy, human civilization would be a lot more like lion civilization, where the males sleep all day, wake up, the women bring them food and have the babies, and the men do very little. But that's not how it was.
Yeah.
It was always more so men running into burning buildings, working in sewers and petroleum rigs,
I think
holding up half the world along with women.
I think if we were actually a patriarchy, we'd be a whole lot closer to fascism than to liberalism.